March is here. We made it after three plus months of high octane winter basketball. The NEPSAC playoffs have arrived. Welcome back. This is kind of an emergency reaction pod episode of the HoopWise Podcast. Ethan Fuller, Steve Hewitt from our own friendly confines. We got a quick week coming up before Super Sunday with all this basketball. It's going to go by so fast. But yeah, Steve, first impressions of this bracket, top end of NEPSAC boys basketball. What do you see and what excites you about these upcoming matches?
Not a surprise at the top. Like you said, we talked about Newman and New Hampton being the top AAA pretty much the entire winter. I think they were 1-2 in my preseason power, and no surprise to see New Hampton at 1, Newman at 2. I want to almost humble brag, but not really humble brag, but I kind of called this with Hampton. I think when we talked after that Phillips Exeter loss back in January, that would be a shocking loss for them. But what did I said? I said they'd be fine. They have the veteran leadership with Keyshawn Tillery, Mason Blackwood. Now they've been here and they've done that. Just kind of a one-off game visitor that day, and since then they've won 14 of 16. I think they've won 5 in a row heading in. So, like about New Hampton heading into the tournament, their complementary pieces are playing really well right now, with Chad Cook, Jaden Harrington, Ty Zabalis. And I think when you look at the roster, Newman probably deeper, but I think New Hampton has the higher upside with the talent. But I think they're going to need those complementary guys to step up this week, especially if they end up playing in the championship game, which I feel like obviously the games need to be played, but I'm almost expecting that kind of collision course for round 3 between those games. 1 and 2 seed, a little trivia time. We don't have to give us any sound effects, but AAA, not a ton of parity over the last decade plus. A 1 or 2 seed has won the championship season since 2014. I was still in college. Ethan, you were probably in diapers, so young.
Pretty much.
So 2013 was the last non-1 or 2 seed to win a championship. Can you name the school? They were a 3 seed. I'll give you that. Can you name the school that last won a championship that wasn't a 1 or 2 seed? And I'll give you a hint. They are not in NEPSAC anymore.
Oh, are we talking Brewster Academy then, or
we're talking Brewster in 13. That's right. I guess that was kind of a dead giveaway when I said they're no longer. It's not that many teams.
That was a helpful hint.
Just all together. So, but like I said, kind of expecting a collision course between New Hampton and Newman. Obviously, there's some really good teams below them that could kind of spoil the party. Darrow, I want to give a shout out to Darrow. Their first in AAA, getting a 3 seed. That's a huge accomplishment for head coach Antonio Anderson, assistant Brandon Wesson, and their team. They're a fun team to watch all year. They just beat on Friday at home, so that's a big one for them, big confidence booster for them going into the tournament. They do have a potential Newman in the semifinals. If both teams were advanced there, that would be at Newman, where I don't think they've lost at the track of New Balance this year.
Wow.
So that would be tough to Derek to go in there and win, but they did just beat him, so who knows what could happen there. The 4-5 is interesting to me. St. Thomas More against Vermont Academy. Vermont Academy, obviously last season's champion. They lost a ton of powerful team. Joe Nodge, PK Defu, and there's they'll go at St. Thomas More. Vermont has been kind of surging lately. They've going into the tournament, those 2 losses to New Hampton and Newman, so not terrible losses by any means. They do have a 24-point win over St. Thomas More during that stretch. So I kind of like Vermont Academy's chances there in that 4, even though it's a road game. But yeah, AAA kind of starts and ends for me with New Hampton and Newman. I'm expecting to see them on Sunday at Western New England Championship game. I'd be surprised if they didn't meet for round 3. They split the season series. You can kind of flip a coin there. Again, we're talking about some of the girls' matchups being kind of a toss-up, but I'm not going to predict that game right now. I kind of want to see how the week kind of goes, but we'll make our predictions before the tournament, and I'll have to make an assessment before then. But yeah, AAA New Hampton Newman kind of leading the pack there.
Yeah, and as you said, you've talked about these teams all winter long. You have, as you kind of alluded to with your receipts, like you've had trust in them even through some of the ups and downs. And we've talked, basically every boys team has experienced some kind of peak and valley at different points this year. And so they've just been able to overcome those hurdles pretty well. And so I see a lot of what you're saying. We can move on to Class AA, which we were talking beforehand. You were really intrigued by. Again, a lot of really great matchups early on in this bracket that I am excited about. I'm sure you're excited about. Yeah, break this down. What do you think is possible in this bracket?
Yeah, I think I would call Cushing probably a clear-cut favorite to me. They're the 1 seed in this bracket. They've won 15 games in a row. I just saw them last week. They beat Worcester Academy at home to finish off the regular season. They went 15-1 in AA. Ryan Mesh is ridiculous. If you haven't seen them yet this season, try to go to one of their playoff games this week. It's worth the trip if you need to make a drive to Cushing. But Cushing at the 1, Cats at number 2. I still like Cats. I think we've already talked about Jackson Terry, who's injured right now. He hurt his wrist a few weeks ago in a game against Putnam. I'm unclear what his status is for the tournament. It didn't seem likely that he'd be back before the end of the season, but things might have changed. He might have healed faster than last week. I haven't gotten an update on that yet, but even without him, I like Jalen Harrell, obviously. Could win a Gatorade Player of the Year for a second year in a row. He's been averaging like almost a triple-double, kind of some ridiculous stat lines. But Cushing Cats, I think they've been the 1-2 all year. So no surprise at the top. Would kind of like in AAA, I would kind of expect those two to meet in the championship. If I were making a prediction right now, 3-6 is where it got really interesting to me. This was really tight over the last final weeks of the season between the group of 4 of St. George's, Kimball Union, Worcester Academy, and Northfield Mount Herman. A lot of jockeying for position over the last week. Ultimately, Kimball Union, it's kind of my first takeaway when I saw this bracket. Kimball Union gets a 3 seed. Kind of a surprise to me. Wasn't expecting, but I kind of looked at the schedule, and they've kind of been surging over the last kind of stretch of the season. They've won 7 games in a row in AA. I think that's probably what was the difference. I know St. George's, even though they won the ISL championship, has kind of been struggling to their standard of late. They lost to Mount St. Charles. They lost to Tabor. They lost their regular season finale to Middlesex. So they're not in the greatest form going into the tournament, and I think maybe some of those losses affected their positioning. But they still get a home game as the 4 against Worcester Academy. That's obviously a tough matchup with Worcester and their firepower with Amir Jenkins came in. That's a really exciting matchup. Kind of would if I'm predicting, I'd kind of probably lean Worcester right now, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, Worcester's been good all year. They've kind of beaten some of these teams. The 6th seed Northfield Mount Herman against Kimball Union. That's a rematch of last Wednesday, actually, at Kimball Union in the same location. So Kimball Union won that game by 9. That's probably part of what made the difference of them getting a 3 seed. Lots to like about Kimball Union. They've had some injuries this year, but Mouse Williams and Isaiah Henderson and Brandon Arnold have kind of been leading the charge, and they're healthy. They feel like they're gelling in the right way right now. So look out for them. I think they probably win at least one game here in this tournament. So So yeah, 3-6 was really interesting. So it was nice to finally kind of get some clarity of of what the positioning was going to be there for the tournament. And then I wanted 7-8 was like kind of a crazy finish. If I'm not mistaken, that it was really kind of four teams fighting for the last two spots. Wilbraham and Munson and Lawrence Academy end up getting in as a 7-8. Wilbraham and Munson's kind of had a crazy season. We haven't talked about how Sam Fleming, their star forward, injured his Achilles in January, so he's out for the season. But they've kind of rallied shorthanded. They finished the season 6-3.
Wow.
Over their last 9 games. And in 5 of those games, their coach Mike Mannix told me 6 players available. They just had six players dressed. So they finish off the season with a win on Saturday over Bremer, which was another team that was fighting for a playoff spot. So that's an incredible story. They end up getting Cats in the first round, so that's obviously a tough matchup to go into Cats, but bravo to Mike Mannix and Wilbraham for seeking into the playoffs given their circumstances. And then Lawrence sneaks in as the 8 seed. So we get some Alex Abuenu playoff action. They'll have to go against Cushing, so that's a tall task, but they're healthy too. Caleb Baker just came back recently. He's a big focal point for them, and Evan Michener, their point guard, missed part of the season with the stress fracture. So Lawrence is healthy and they're feeling good. So yeah, a lot of intrigue here in AA. So looking forward to seeing how that kind of shakes out.
Yeah, it's fun that some of these quarterfinal matchups are so strong early. Makes for tough decisions for you as far as who to watch at what time, but it's a lot of good basketball, and the tension's about to turn way up, which we're excited about. And then we'll move to Class A. Again, we've talked about some of these teams at the top a good amount. We had Ben Farmer at Williston Northampton on to talk about his team earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
They're the 1 seed. Phillips Exeter, as you've kind of explained through their ups and downs and injury hurdles, still a really strong team, and number 2 seed. Tabor 3 seed. Yeah, so where do you go with this bracket? How many teams do you think have a shot? What do you like?
Yeah, let's kind of quickly rifle through. Williston, again, we had Ben Farmer, their head coach, on the show. I apologized to him in person about not giving them any love in the preseason, and then they just go out and go 15-0 in Class A, and
wow,
beat Tabor by 30 early in the year, and they just been on a tear. They had 1 loss all season, and I would expect them to make a run here into the championship. Tough match against St. Paul's in the first round. Landon Clark for St. Paul's has been magnificent in his senior year, the Princeton commit. I think Wilson gets by them. A lot of intriguing matchups in this one. Choate Dexter's a good 4-5. Choate beat Dexter by, I believe, 16 earlier in the year, but I think that was like 2-3 months ago. So Dexter's been rolling. Choate's been rolling, so that's a good matchup. I'm intrigued by a possible semifinal between Tabor and Exeter. If you recall, Tabor handed Exeter their first loss of the season. That was about a month ago, but that was also the first game that Exeter was without their starting point guard Tyler Bike, who's out for the season with a torn labrum. So they didn't have a ton of time to really prepare without him for that game. They were still kind of processing the emotions of kind of losing one of their best players. So I'm intrigued by that potential matchup if those teams can match up again. Exeter, obviously, with the benefit of 2-3 weeks to kind of go through 2-3 weeks without Bike and kind of figure themselves out without him. And Tabor's been rolling too. They beat St. George's last week. Obviously, that win over Exeter was big for them and their confidence. So that's a really exciting semifinal matchup. And then the possibility exists, Ethan. We talked about it with Ben Farmer, of a Wilson versus Exeter championship, which would be, I feel like, fitting given so that For the listeners that don't remember, that game was canceled. Williston against Exeter back on, I think it was December 20th because of a snowstorm. And you can find our episode with Ben Farmer to kind of get the details of that one. It was a crazy, crazy day, but that game unfortunately had to be canceled. And but the possibility exists now that both of them can kind of take care of business as the 1 and 2 seeds that they meet for the championship, which would be at Suffield Academy on Sunday. So obviously a lot has to go right. Some really good teams in this bracket that could kind of spoil the party, but that possibility absolutely exists, and I'd be very excited for that. So
yeah, no, it's as soon as I looked at this bracket and I saw they were on opposite sides, I was like, oh, so this is still alive. Because you had teased like a lot of stuff would have to go right since we talked about it in January to get this matchup, but the fact that it's still on the table is interesting. And again, like there are a lot of really great teams that will want to break that up, but it's on the table, which is exciting. Class A, a lot of exciting things to look forward to there, and then Class B we'll kind of wrap it up with. And I asked you this before, and you said this with relative confidence, and you can say it on air if you'd like. There is the most upset potential when you look at just pure seed upsets in this bracket, possibly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll start with Millbrook as the 1 seed. They're a very worthy 1 seed. They'll play King in the first round. I don't see an upset there, but in each of the other 3 matchups, we have Governors versus Rivers as the 4-5, Pomfret Brooks as the 3-6, and then Canterbury St. Mark's as the 2-7. Those are all could be toss-ups to me. St. Mark's has been awesome this year with head coach Justin Perrin, and they've got some big wins, and I could absolutely see them going into Canterbury and winning that game. And Brooks has been surging this week. They got a big win against St. Mark's on Wednesday, which was, I think, maybe a big difference maker for them in getting into the tournament. Alex Wilkins, 47 points, program record.
Crazy. Yeah.
And a win over Roxbury Latin on Saturday. So I'm assuming he's feeling really good. And Brooks is interesting to me. Just they had their struggles early in the year, but a lot of that had to do because of Alex Wilkins was out for the first month or so with that wrist injury. And he's back, and they've looked a lot better with him, obviously. Division I firm and commit. And they're going to be motivated after what happened last year when they were up by double digits against Rivers in the semifinals and kind of let that slip away. And now they're back. They're back in the playoffs, and obviously a lot has to go right, but they're going to be motivated to get there again and kind of finish the job. And then we talked a ton about Rivers, kind of figuring things out this year. Obviously, Andrew Alexenko was out for most of the season with his injuries. He is back. He's been back for about 2 to 3 weeks. They didn't do quite enough to get to the 4 seed for a home playoff game. So as the 5, it looks like they'll probably have to go on the road for the majority of this tournament, or all of it. If they get by Govs, probably playing Millbrook in the second round, and obviously the championship would be at a neutral site. But lot to like about Rivers. I said it on a previous podcast. If I was making predictions, I'd probably pick them with Alexenko back and Altman and Fiore playing the way they've been playing all season. I just have a hard time seeing them lose, especially in this time of year. As we talked about, 3-time reigning champs. They know how to win at this time of year. But that semifinal matchup against Millbrook, and we haven't really talked a lot about Millbrook this season, but that's a really, really good team. I think 20-5. I think they only have 2 or 3 losses in NEPSAC at all for their entire season. And a little bit of breaking news: their head coach of 12 years, Billy Tom, will be retiring after the season. So I think they're going to be motivated to send their coach out on a high note with a championship. Yeah. And they made the championship game last year. They got crushed by Rivers in the championship. That was a stacked Rivers team. But Millbrook brought a lot of those guys back. Zumana Traore, Amadou Fall are their top two guys. So they're going to be motivated to also kind of finish the job, and they have that potential matchup against Rivers in the semifinals, which could be an added motivator for them, obviously, with how last year went. So yeah, not. So that scares me if I'm Rivers a little bit, but that would be a fun matchup. So I'm hoping. I mean, I kind of overlooked Govs, I think, but Govs has been awesome this year. So I could see a lot. I could see a lot happening in this bracket. If I were to, it's gonna look if you make if you fill out a bracket, if you fill out these brackets, it's gonna get a lot of red in it, and it's gonna look a lot like a March Madness bracket with just the unpredictability of some of these matchups, and we could see some surprises in Class B, I think, but yeah. That should be a fun bracket, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of bust potential here, but I think that more, just, like you said, speaks to how great some of these lower seeds are versus, like, no disrespect to some of the higher seeds. There's just a lot of intrigue in this bracket, and in the four that we talked about. So that pretty much wraps it up for us. As we both have kind of said, we're going to have a ton of preview content coming out. Literally, as soon as we end this recording, we are going to go back to writing some preview content. We're going to have more every day, pretty much. You will see us do round by round predictions for these brackets and throughout the NEPSAC tournaments. And it's going to be a really fun sprint. So stay plugged in with us because we got a lot for you. So yeah, for Steve Hewitt, I'm Ethan Fuller. Thanks for listening to our emergency reaction HoopWise podcast. And we'll see you pretty soon.